Jeremiah and Jesus are clear today. Someday soon the Messiah is coming. And when he does, he's going to right every wrong, destroy every evil, end every war, execute justice, and make all things new. That sounds great if we're not doing any wrongs that need to be righted, or if we're not doing any evil that will be destroyed, or if we are in right relationship with everyone and offer them respect and justice no matter their size, shape, color, condition, or culture, and if we're looking ahead in anticipation to what God has for us instead of hanging on to what we love from the past. Because if we are doing any wrong, or indulging in any evil, or at war with anyone, or treating anyone unjustly, or wed to our past and the way things used to be, back in the good old days, we'll be in for a rude awakening when Jesus comes again in glory to judge the living and the dead, and we will end up more judged than glorified. And that's why on this first Sunday of Advent, as we gear up to celebrate Jesus' first arrival as that baby in Bethlehem, and look ahead to his second arrival as the conquering King of Kings, I have a bit of advice. Jesus is coming soon. Look busy. Now, you remember when we were kids and our parents stepped out of the room and left us alone for a little while, or at school when the teacher turned the back on the class for a little while, or at work when the boss is away and nobody's watching and we can fool around because nobody's watching. Or we could do what we were supposed to be doing what we knew was right, knowing that at any moment, mom or dad or the boss or the teacher were going to show up. And if they returned and we're doing what we're supposed to, they would smile and all would be right with the world. But if we weren't, if we're making a mess or wasting our time or slacking off when they showed up, life could get unpleasant. And that's where we are right now. Jesus came to earth, he lived, he died, he rose again, he ascended into heaven where he's praying for us and he's preparing a place to go live with him forever and getting ready to come again in glory to judge the living and the dead. And like our parents and teachers and bosses did periodically, he's out of sight. Unlike our parents and teachers and bosses, he's been gone 2,000 years. But like our parents and teachers and bosses, at some point, he's going to reappear. And like our parents, teachers, and bosses, he hopes to find us diligently doing our assignment, which is why I repeat my advice. Jesus is coming soon. Look busy. But better than merely looking busy, let's choose to be genuinely busy, doing what Jesus told us to do, loving God, loving our neighbors, loving one another. Now, the good news is most of us are doing that. We're loving God alone and together. We're loving our neighbors near and far. And we're loving each other here in the Messiah family, both the ones we know and the ones we have yet to meet. Now, I know we're doing that because I've seen you. I've seen you, especially as you did what you volunteered to do in the Messiah's way this past year. And on this first Sunday of Advent, when we get to start our new Messiah's Way ministries or pick them up again from last year, that's what we're doing today. But before we do that, I want to thank you not only for looking busy this past year, but for being busy, loving God and loving your neighbors and loving each other, because your love is changing the world with Jesus. So, if you loved God this past year by serving in any way in Sunday worship, if you were on altar guild, an acolyte, an usher, a lector, a lay Eucharistic minister, a lay Eucharistic visitor, a singer, a musician, a computer tech, or a sound tech, raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you. If you loved God by praying or reading or listening to the Bible regularly by yourself this year, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved God by praying or studying the Bible regularly in a small group, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved God by working on our campus, fixing things or cleaning things, or trimming and raking with the lay weeders, or setting up or tearing down tables and chairs, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved God by giving financially to the Messiah family or any other Christian cause, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved God by showing up here and worshiping with the Messiah family, and since you're here today, that would be all of you, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you. And if you loved God by doing your duty as His child in our culture and economy, which would include students listening in school and studying hard, employees working diligently, employers respecting your employees and paying them fairly, business people serving your customers honestly, citizens obeying the law, paying taxes, voting in elections, people about to retire, listening to God to see what He'd like to do with you and your time and talent in this next chapter of your life, and people who are already retired, utilizing the time you never had while you were working to serve or mentor someone and make a difference in the world. So if you did any of those, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you for loving God. Now, if you loved your neighbors by serving in one of our parish partners, Habitat for Humanity, Edgewood Children's Ranch, the Hope Center, the Maxey Center, Dillard Street Elementary School, bringing food for the Christian Service Center, or Thanksgiving or Christmas baskets, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved your neighbors by serving or giving financially to any charity or fundraiser or a beggar on the side of the road, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved your neighbor by any act of kindness to someone at school or work or in your neighborhood, whether you knew them or not, or you let somebody ahead of you in line or in traffic, or you heard of someone in need and you prayed for them or helped them, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you for loving your neighbors. And if you loved one another by serving our babies or children or teenagers in the nursery or children's church or Shine Kids Club or Activate Youth Group or Vacation Bible School or cooking camp, or in any way interacted with any of our children, please raise your hand. No, there's more of you than that. I know that. I've seen you. But thank you. If you loved one another by making or taking food to someone in need with the Casserole Patrol, or visiting or contacting someone who was sick or sad or in the hospital, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved one another by serving as an office angel, or making food for coffee hour, or simple supper, Sunday simple supper, or a men's or women's supper, or the parish picnic, or the birthday party, or the funeral reception, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved one another by praying for folks in the Messiah family, on the prayer chain, as an intercessor during communion, as a daughter of the king, or a vestry person, or for yellow cards, or if you prayed for anybody in the parish family, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you loved one another by doing your part in your own family, that would be children, honoring your mother and father. Husbands, loving your wife as Christ loved the church and gave Himself for her. Wives, respecting your husband and adapting to him. Parents, raising your kids to know and love the Lord. Grandparents, bringing your grandkids here or spending time with them. If you did any of those, please raise your hand. Thank you for loving one another. Now, that was quite a workout for some of us, wasn't it? But you may not have realized all that you're doing to love God and your neighbors and each other. And I imagine that very few of us were aware of all that all these other people are doing to love God and our neighbors and each other. And even if you didn't get much of a workout, I trust each of us held up our hand at least once. And that's good, because when the Messiah returns, He wants to find us diligently doing what He told us to do in His absence, which is loving God, loving our neighbors, loving each other. So yes, Jesus is coming soon. Look busy. Now, if you have not been busy this past year loving God, your neighbors, or each other, today is the perfect day to start. You don't have to wait until next September when we sign up for the Messiah's Way again to jump in. You can jump in anytime. And if you have been busy this year, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to welcome Sleeping Willis.